you also know that you have one uncle somewhere or one dad somewhere that can give you all of the money, you want to take that trust out of God and put it in a human being. And God is saying to us today that what is that thing that will literally make you go back to your gods? The book of Ruth is known mainly for the love story between Ruth and Boaz, but there's so much more to the book of Ruth, and we'll be doing a Bible study on that. We'll start from Ruth 1, we'll read 2, 3, 4, and then I will share the things that stand out to me and that will bless you as well. So let's just read together. So Ruth 1, during the time of the judges, there was a famine in the land. A man left Bethlehem in Judah with his wife and 2 sons to stay in the territory of Moab for a while. The man's name was Elimelech and his wife's name was Naomi. The names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem in Judah. These words, man. They entered the fields of Moab and settled there. Naomi's husband died and she was left with her 2 sons. Her sons took Moabite women as their wives. One was named Orpah and the second one was named Ruth. We're getting to the exciting part. After they lived in Moab about 10 years, both Mahlon and Chilion also died. And Naomi was left without her 2 children and without her husband. So up until this point, Naomi left with a full family to a new land, and after some time, it was basically just her and the wives that had children had basically brought into the family. So her husband and her 2 sons were now gone, but she still had her daughters-in-law. Verse 6, she and her daughters-in-law set out to return from the territory of Moab because she had heard in Moab that the Lord had paid attention to his people's needs by providing them food. So while studying this today, I actually wanted to mark it, but there was another part of the chapter that stood out even more for me, so I just decided to leave this for another time where it comes top. But basically, this was a blessing to my heart to know that people can hear about the testimony of God in your life, because it says here that she heard that the Lord had paid attention to his people by providing them with food. And I really love this because I've heard and I agree that we should not basically be people that pray about material things. The lady that goes to God and you're always asking for things, God provide, God give me this, God give me that. Beyond the things that we can get from God, we should become somebody in God, right? But I also love that we serve a God that doesn't only give us like spiritual blessings, like growth spiritually, but he blesses us with our needs. The Bible says that even before we ask, even though I'm going out of roots now, but it's a blessing to know that we have a God who cares about the needs of his people. It literally says, and I will say again, that the Lord had paid attention to his people, and this is so good because sometimes many of us feel like God doesn't pay attention to us. We see things happening for other people. We see testimonies that people share from time to time, and it's almost like, God, do you even remember me? But this verse is a reminder to you that God pays attention to you. The Bible says that even the hair on your head is numbered by the Lord. I always say that it will take an excessive kind of love for someone to know the number of hair on your head, but God knows that number because he cares for you. So remember that God indeed pays attention to the cares, to the heart cry of his people, of your own heart cry. And it might even seem like, oh, it's been so long that God didn't answer a specific prayer. But again, this is your reminder that God pays attention and he would answer you according to his will and according to your needs. But let's read on. Verse 7, she left the place where she had been living, accompanied by her 2 daughters-in-law, and traveled along the road leading back to the land of Judah. Naomi said to them, each of you go back to your mother's home. May the Lord show kindness to you as you have shown to the dead and to me. May the Lord grant each of you rest in the house of your new husband. She kissed them and they wept loudly. Verse 10, they said to her, we insist on returning with you to your people. But Naomi replied, return home, my daughters. Why do you want to go with me? Am I able to have any more sons who could become your husbands? Return home, my daughters. Go on, for I am too old to have another husband. Even if I thought there were still hope for me to have a husband tonight and to bear sons, would you be willing to wait for them to grow up? Would you restrain yourselves from remarrying? So from these verses, we can tell that this was a different time, because from what Naomi is saying, it is clear that at that time, it was the case that if somebody's husband dies, they can get married to the brother of their husband. Do you get? If a woman's husband dies, instead of going to remarry from another family, if there is another man in that family that is age appropriate, that is suited for marriage, she can just as well marry him. So Naomi was saying, why are you guys trying to follow me? I cannot get married to another man now. And even if I get married to another man now, are you going to wait for my children or my sons to grow again for you to marry them? So she was basically encouraging them to go back to their people. So reading on, no, my daughters, my life is much too bitter for you to share, because the Lord's hand has turned against me. Again they wept loudly, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. Naomi said, look, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Follow your sister-in-law. So there are two things here, and this is the part that actually stood out for me while studying this chapter today. The part where Naomi said she is going back to her people, but not just going back to her people, but that she's also going back to her gods. And this is something that I have come to really appreciate and love about Ruth. The fact that she could actually have gone back to her people and to the familiar and to her gods. But the second thing that I want us to also note here is that there is something that Ruth also found in the God of Naomi. So this is something I don't see a lot of people talk about when they talk about this story of Naomi and Ruth saying, your people will be my people, your God will be my God. What was it about how Naomi lived her life that made a woman say, I am not going back, I am following you and your God? And even though Orpah too was a daughter-in-law that clearly loved her mother-in-law, the love was not strong enough for her to leave the familiar, to leave her people, and most especially to leave her gods. And this verse made me just sit down with myself today. I always say that Bible study is practical. So when I read the Bible, I always put it into my life, like, how can I apply this? And I started to ask myself that, is there anything in my life that would make me go back to my gods? Is there anything I will face in life that will push me to go back, not just to what was familiar, but to things that would become gods in my life, to things that will literally take the place of God in my life? And for you watching this, that might be different things. For some people, going back to your gods might mean going back to alcohol. It might mean going back to the lifestyle that Christ has saved you from. It might even mean good things. So one picture that I feel like the Lord put in my heart was people going back to their family members that are wealthy. So let's say, for example, God has asked you to do something out of your comfort zone. You know that you would have to trust God and believe God for the finances of that thing. But because you also know that you have one uncle somewhere or one dad somewhere that can give you all of the money, you want to take that trust out of God and put it in a human being. And God is saying to us today that what is that thing that will literally make you go back to your gods? It is something to sit with, because the Bible also says, take heed lest you fall. Let everyone examine themselves. And that's how I see Bible study, that God, please keep my heart in you. Let me never get to the point where there is something that will take me back to not just the familiar, but to putting things in the place of God in my life. So Orpah, the other daughter-in-law, basically went back to her gods, which is sad, right? But let's carry on. But Ruth replied, do not plead with me to abandon you or to return and not follow you. For wherever you go, I will go, and wherever you live, I will live. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. I think this is one of the most popular verses in the book of Ruth. And I want us to also remind ourselves that how can we be like Naomi in this case, where a daughter-in-law sees how you live with God, how you talk about God, how you reverence God in your life, to the point where even when her husband had died, she still wanted to follow Naomi, not only because she had heard that, oh, God is now providing food for them, but because of the God that Naomi was serving. So how can you be a Naomi in a way where people can see God in your life, people can see the testimony of God, the light of God, the joy of God in your life, and they feel like your God will be my God, your people will be my people? So that verse is one that is very popular, but it's one that highlights something about Naomi to me. Even though the book is about Ruth mostly, it tells me something about who Naomi was and how she was probably a really strong woman of God, even in all of these like sad things and hardships that she had gone through in life. But let's read on. Verse 17 says, where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord punish me and do so severely, if anything but death separates you and me. When Naomi saw that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped talking to her. I also marked this part in my Bible because it's so interesting that somebody can get to the point where you are just like, you obviously have refused to listen to me, so that's fine. And it reminds me of the parable that Jesus gave in the New Testament, where he said men ought to always pray and not to give up. And the parable was about a woman who disturbed an unjust judge to the point where the judge had to answer her, not because he was a good man, but because the woman kept going to him for help. And this just says that Naomi just gave up, because at some point you yourself, you get tired, because Ruth had just determined that she was not going to turn back no matter what what Naomi said. So Naomi just gave up. Verse 19 to 22 now, which is the end. The two of them traveled until they came to Bethlehem. When they entered Bethlehem, the whole town was excited about their arrival, and the local women exclaimed, "Can this be Naomi?" Don't forget that she had left for a long time. She left with 2 sons and a husband, but she was coming back with just her daughter-in-law. And then verse 20, "Don't call me Naomi, call me Mara," she answered, "for the Almighty has made me very bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why do you call me Naomi, since the Lord has opposed me and the Almighty has afflicted me?" So Naomi came back from the territory of Moab with her daughter-in-law Ruth the Moabitess. They arrived in Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. So that's the end of chapter 1. But before we move on to chapter 2, which will be the next video, I want to call out verse 20, when Naomi was basically exclaiming, "Don't call me Naomi, call me Mara." Because the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me, and oh my God, I don't know if anybody else can relate, but you know, each and every one of us have those things in our lives that just feels like, God, why are you being tough on me on this? Or why does it feel like people have it easier than me here? Why does it feel like you're not answering this particular prayer that I've been praying for so long? But this is also an encouragement to never get to the point where even when people are celebrating you or celebrating God in your life, you are stopping them from celebrating the testimony that they can see by telling them, "This is the hardship I'm facing. This is what God has done or hasn't done in my life." Let me just read it again. She literally told them, "Do not call me Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty has made me very bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why do you call me Naomi, since the Lord has opposed me and the Almighty has afflicted me?" So yes, Naomi honestly must have had a hard life. I cannot even imagine what she went through as a woman who lost her husband and still lost her children in the process. And then she's coming back, people recognize her, and then you want to say, "Oh, is this not Naomi? Oh, we've missed you. We've not seen you in so many years." She's like, "Don't call me that. Change my name," literally. But I want us to also remember that names have meaning. For me, my name is Mobolaji. My full name is Mobolaji, and it means that I woke up with wealth. So sometimes, even when it feels like maybe I don't have all of the financial blessings I want yet, I always remind myself that my name is literally a prophecy. So for you, who your parents have probably given you a beautiful name that has an amazing meaning, do not let people then turn that into something else. When people call your name, let it be a reminder of the testimony of God in your life. Let it be a reminder of what God still has in promise to do for you. What God has said he will do, he will do. So when people celebrate you, when they testify of the God that they can see in your life, or of the lights that they can see in your life, don't say, "Don't talk to me like that, don't tell me that, call me this instead," where you're trying to even push negativity down people's throats when they can see something special about your life. So no matter what it is that you are going through, remember that God hears the cry of his people. That's literally one of the first verses in this chapter, where he says that Naomi heard that the Lord had answered the prayer of his people by providing them with food, and that's why she was returning back to her people. And I want you to know that no matter how tough it might be right now, I don't know where you are at, but God answers, God hears, and you will never be called Mara in Jesus' name. You will be Naomi. You will be filled with joy. You will be filled with light, no matter what life throws at you. So until our next video, Ruth chapter 2, do take care, and I love you.